Duchess's Dinner Party, a podcast all about hit social deduction game Blood on the Clocktower and the distinguished opinions of its players. Joining myself, Mia Gwen, in a visit to the Duchess tonight, my first guest interviewed for MI6 and after several rounds of interviews was not given the job thanks to being described as disconcertingly good at lying. It's Ed. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and where people might know you from.
Hi, I'm Ed. Hopefully you know me from TPI streams and a bunch of other streams all over the place. Patters, Chris Grace, a whole load of others, and from giving distressingly long opinions on other podcasts about Clocktower, and just generally never shutting up.
It's a joy to have you on. My second guest has never worn denim in their life. It's Ed. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and where people might know you from.
Hello there. Yes, we've decided that I shall be referred to as Ed for the purposes of this podcast for comedy's sake, but I believe that online and Discord and in Clocktower circles, I'm more commonly known as Gambling. That's how you probably will have encountered me out in the wild. I am a human being who plays Clocktower. I have never provided any opinions of any kind on this game in any format. I've never been on a podcast. This is the first. Haha. So, in many ways, I am the exact fundamental opposite of Ed, and therefore you can assume that I am not lying right now.
Well, it's a delight to have you both on. Ed, would you like to go ahead and share your opinion first?
Sure. I provided Mia with a list of opinions, and Mia chose one, and chose the one that was the loosest about Clocktower, but it's a thing that I just always want to be pushing in the world. And that's that feedback is king in improving in anything in life, but obviously, therefore, that includes Clocktower. But we as a society, and we as a smaller insular society, the Clocktower Society, and we as a grander scheme society, are terrified of giving it and therefore potentially offending someone, or showing that we have different views, or giving them any reason to think that we're not a perfect part of the clan, of the in crowd that our sort of caveman sensibilities wants us to always be. And so we never give anyone a chance to change or to improve. And this is a thing that's getting worse and worse in the modern era, because the only time anyone contradicts you in the modern era is on social media when they yell at you about it. And we don't do anything else ever. And so I just want, and I keep trying to give people the opportunity for this, and I will always try and give people the opportunity for this, just having the space for feedback is absolutely sovereign. And so it's been a thing that I've enforced in games I run on stream and in person and everything else in the Clocktower scene for years, is the group chat after the game isn't very important for the game, but it is massively important for your group, because it's the opportunity where you get to bring up storyteller choices that were maybe you felt biased towards one team or another, and to understand what your storyteller was thinking, and to understand what the other players were thinking, and to understand why plays were made and why you maybe got executed at this moment in time. But all of that is just a microcosm of like soft feedback. That's feedback that no one's having to turn around to you and go, "Hey, Ed, you responded really harshly when I came at you that time." They're not having to do that. They're getting to be like, "Okay, what they're getting to give you that same concept without having to address it personally and directly, and giving you the sort of head-to-head feedback." So those post-game sessions are so integral to everyone learning to be better at being part of a small group, and by extension part of a larger group, and by extension part of society as a whole. But that doesn't just stop there. It doesn't just stop just because you've given feedback in those sort of group settings about the specific game, and because you've chatted about the game afterwards and you now understand what people were thinking, and you've maybe learned, oh, here's some tells as a result about how people play. This applies about everything. Like, if you have an experience with a storyteller where you think to yourself, I think that decision was the moment we were screwed, even if you don't think that it was an unjust decision, it's still not unhelpful to tell that storyteller, this was the moment, this was the piece of information that killed us, because they then have context to understand that. The number of times that I've had people ask for, ask me for advice as a storyteller, like, what did I do wrong here? And the number of times that the answer is, oh, I can probably, if I sat there and went through it, I can pinpoint the moment. But whichever team lost will be able to pinpoint it better. And the fact that you're asking me, someone who wasn't in the game, and yes, like I know Clocktower very well, and I can give you my opinion as best as I'm able, but I wasn't playing the game. Your players were, and you as a storyteller and you as a player want to make the best experience for everyone around you. You need to give the feedback to the people that can actually do something with the feedback. So this works in both directions. As a society, we desperately need to give people easy space to give feedback, and we need to. This is an aside. I really need a new phrase that is the equivalent of like "man up," because it fits here. Whatever that phrase is, we need to find a gender non-specific phrase to fit this context. But yeah, we need people to just grow up and both give the feedback and be prepared to receive it. Because 98% of the time, as long as you're coming at it from a genuine intent to help and to understand, saying to someone, I think this thing you did wasn't ideal for almost any reason, it's an attempt to reach out. It's an attempt to empathize. It's an attempt to find sort of compassion and common ground. And so if you give yourself and others the space to do it, and you make sure that you put forward a good, receptive aspect of yourself to make sure that other people aren't going to feel reluctant of give you feedback, you will learn just so much. And that's like critical in Clocktower. It's critical in life. It's one of the reasons that it's 90% of the reason I'm good at Clocktower, notwithstanding the previously mentioned of being disconcertingly good at lying since I left university. Is because I have always tried to get people to give me feedback, and then I've very actively tried to act on it. Even if it feels alien to me, I will go into my next game after someone has said, oh, you had a tell. No matter what that tell is, I will try and fully invert my playstyle to see if I can change that tell and then come back and do different things. And so the best way to learn is by getting feedback. It's almost impossible to be introspective. Everyone who knows best are the people who witness and the people who experience you and your playstyle. And so you need to give them the space to tell you that so that you can get better. And conversely, you need to tell them those things so that they can get better. I guarantee you they'll appreciate it.
If I may provide some constructive feedback on your opinion,
Yes,
I'm sure you're not suggesting that an emotional reaction to receiving feedback is inherently invalid, right? Like if
No,
a player in your game comes up and says, you fucked up, you did X, Y, Z, and that's why we lost. Responding by getting angry and saying, hold a second, that's not wrong.
No, not at all. I think the major thing about it is that generally the times that you get feedback that aggressively are when you've not given a space for the feedback to be more gentle, and or you've done something extreme enough that you're getting that response in the moment. Now, it is completely legitimate and understandable to have an emotive response to feedback, and in that situation, you do have to go, okay, this is quite a lot. I need to take a minute to consider that, and you can sort of deal with the social impact in that moment. But if you run away from the feedback even happening in the first place, then you don't even know. You don't even know that person is furious at you and would be willing to go, that decision you make was fucking awful. So how can you improve?
And also as a counterpoint, like as a corollary of that, having an emotional reaction to a game that you played in is good in some ways. This is an emotive game where we run passionately deep. That was poorly phrased, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so if you do feel the urge to go to your storyteller after a game and say, I am angry because, well, but with more expletives, you don't do that. There are certain limitations on civilization, but your position that you can provide, as long as you can explain it. I think in general, I agree with you. I think that more feedback, more generally, is better. Just more is better there. I think that, and a piece of advice you could give to your listeners there, Mr. Ed, is that when you want to give feedback to a storyteller specifically, or you want to give feedback to other players, and this is from my own adventures into the wild public forums of the online game, one of the best ways you can give that feedback is by asking a question. You don't necessarily want to say, I am angry because you fucked up, excuse my language. You want to, the easiest and most effective way to do that is to ask someone, why did you do this? Because then they have an opportunity to think through themselves. Sometimes people don't know why they did a thing, but if you ask the question, they are forced to consider why.
Absolutely. It also gives you the opportunity, if you are the one feeling the emotion about it, and I will come back to the emotion point in a minute because there's a thing you said that I want to elaborate on. But if you're the one feeling the emotion about it, asking the question, why X, also gives your emotions a chance to settle, but also it gives those emotions a chance to connect. It gives you a minute to be like, to comprehend what the other perspective was and what the source of those emotions really is. Because a lot of the time when people are upset about things that happen in Clocktower is because they think that either a player or a storyteller has done something to them. That's how your emotions are responding. Like, this person has attacked me, and therefore I am feeling the fight or flight, and I am feeling attacked as a result, and I'm feeling it's unacceptable because of the approach to me. But from the other perspective, that person is going to be going, well, I thought X, Y, Z, and this is why I thought. This is why I broached the subject in this way. Or this is why I came at you. This is why I nominated you. These other things, and it gives your monkey brain, the subconscious emotive brain, a chance to understand and comprehend, which is what it desperately wants to do. Your emotive brain is always looking for connection, and it also gives you a chance to let those emotions contextualize and the innate rush of chemicals that happen every time you're feeling major emotion to settle, so that you can actually feel the balance between your monkey brain and your conscious one, and the one that's hopefully controlling your day-to-day life. Yes. Human, where the falling angel meets the rising ape. It's just one of my favorite Pratchett quotes. Anyway, but yeah, the other thing that I wanted to call out on I think this sounds like something you'd agree with me on. People are very wary of emotion. I think, again, as part of this, we're very terrified of implied feedback and upsetting people. If you're not feeling emotion, you're not living. If you're not feeling emotion, we can replace you with AI. That's really how this is with humanity at the moment. If you're not feeling emotion, there's nothing happening. There's nothing there. And just because an emotion is negative doesn't mean it's a bad one. It's still telling you that you're living. And so, personally, I don't mind, in the grand scheme, feeling angry about a game. Like, I will happily go to a film and knowing that I'm going to cry. Like, I will, I watched The Apprentice, the Trump biopic, knowing that I was going to be furious. That didn't demote it as an experience. That was still an experience that I appreciate and love, and it's a part of me that I got to feel those emotions and respond to something, and it tells me who I am, what I emotively react to. So just because you feel the emotion doesn't make it bad. Just because the game triggered the emotion doesn't make it bad. It tells you who you are and what you value and how you want to be. And it's also not bad to express that, as long as you aren't actively putting that on someone else and making life a lot worse for them in a way that isn't necessary because of you feeling an emotion.
Is this what you wanted, Mia? You invited us onto a Clocktower podcast, and now we're discussing the nature of human experience and emotional cathartic reactions.
This is why I prefaced this opinion with the fact that Mia chose it.
Well, I wanted to be clear. Sorry, just very quickly. I did give Ed the option to change it right before we started, and Ed was like, no, I'll stick with this one thing, please.
It's because I had half a plan for this one.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with using Clocktower to develop lessons and themes and thoughts that then go out into the greater world. I will be in, that's something I might be talking about later, maybe, mysteriously.
Can I give a personal anecdote as to why you shouldn't give feedback? So this is, to be clear, absolutely not serious. But this was, I think, when the Hatter came out. And I played in Pattis's release game of the Hatter that he did on stream on a Friday. And in that game, the Hatter died at, I think, Final 5, maybe Final 7. And the demon decided to change into a leech. And the good team lost that game. I was on the good team, and the feedback that was given was that we couldn't find the leech host once the Hatter had changed once the demon changed into the leech via the Hatter. And someone gave that feedback, a useful piece of feedback. The next day, I was playing in person. Patches came and ran a game. And once again, he ran the same script. He was like, "Oh, the game on stream last night was fun. Let's run it again." I was on the evil team. The Hatter died going into Final 5, which was then followed by the demon choosing to become the leech. And Patters, hearing the feedback from last game, decided, no, I'm going to give the leech host some misinformation this game. So thanks to that feedback, I lost 2 Hatter games in a row to the same situation. I was on the opposite team each time. Very frustrating. I haven't let it go.
Sounds a lot like you're the common denominator here, Mia.
Yeah, but imagine for a second being on the other side of that coin and being the person who won both times. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't you feel awesome that the feedback helped you win 2 games? Yeah, no, obviously not. That speaks to I think I get the point that was maybe mostly in jest, but that does speak to the point that feedback of all kinds should be taken in a conglomerate. That taking any individual response to a game and just going, yes, that is the definitive answer to what went wrong this game, is more often than not incorrect. It's a team game. Everyone's going to have a bunch of different experiences. And maybe this is why Ed is demanding more feedback generally, just at all times, so that a storyteller can receive input not just from those people who had a rough time, but also those players who maybe had a good time, so that the storyteller can build a better, more holistic view of what a good game is.
Yeah, Ed's completely correct on that. I know it's also the difference between what I referred to as like social media, Twitter type feedback of just yelling an opinion at you, as if that is like the one truth, and actual feedback where you're aware that there's nuance in the world, and that it's possible to get something wrong but not be capital W wrong. It's possible to make mistakes without being 180 degrees from what is correct. And I think it's one of the things that I was, as society we desperately need. But storytelling is really storytelling is quite strong. Playing is the strongest. Almost all sort of social issues that occur in games, in Clocktower especially, they're not usually to do with you are doing everything completely wrong. They're to do with you are doing one element of this 20% too much. And that's not a like you need to change everything about yourself. It's just you are 20% too aggressive in the context, or you are you are making choices that are just wrong by a matter of degree rather than by a matter of this is completely the wrong thing ever. Which is again, I want more feedback in the world, because how else are we to discover exactly where in the spectrum of life we want to exist? And the way I try to do that, and the way I think is best in the world to try and do that, is the very sort of stoic philosophy of, well, we try things and then we get feedback, and then when we get feedback we get to go, oh, I do agree with that, and I think that this is valid, but I think this would be too far, and so I'm going to adjust this much. And then you'll get more feedback and you'll go, okay, so I've adjusted like this already, and now I need to adjust a little bit back the other way, or maybe I need to adjust a little bit more.
I have a genuine point here to make, as opposed to my previous one. A lot of, I think, what you're talking about here almost comes across as negative feedback. And I wanted to also discuss maybe giving positive feedback. I think you touched on it briefly earlier in mentioning that you can potentially ask someone why they did something. But I think it's very easy. Like, what are some more concrete ways of giving feedback? I've thought of, if you play tabletop role-playing games, there's a system called Stars and Wishes, which is often at the end of a tabletop role-playing game session, you'll give people stars. So think of it almost as like a gold star. I really enjoyed this session when you did this thing that was really in character. You did this great bit of roleplay. And then you also do a wish, which doesn't really matter here. But it's basically like, I'd like to see this in the future. But that's a way of giving positive feedback. And potentially is the reason that we're scared of giving feedback is because we don't give the negative feedback early enough, which means that when we do give it, it's because it's reached a boiling point or a problem. And is there a way that, for example, we can give positive feedback in order to, as another way of mitigating those issues, perhaps? And like, What would that look like in Clocktower specifically?
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% correct. It's always tempting to focus on the negative because that's the thing that people struggle with, or they most visibly struggle with. But also, it sort of raises the relevant point that if you get, as long as you're not being Pollyanna-ish and everything must be described as perfect all the time, which is a different problem that Clocktower groups and gaming groups and society can have. Um, as long as you're not going that far, giving positive feedback as well as negative feedback, not in a shit sandwich way. It's a terrible management technique that got trained into everyone in the 90s, but in a like being willing to give both at all times. If there are things that were good, call them out. If there were things that were bad, call them out, is a huge part of fostering the environment that's needed for either kind of feedback to be in any way successful. Because if you just tell someone they've done something good and the entire circle sits there and goes, "Oh, yeah, that thing was good. Everyone's happy. This was good." Then that's not. There is some learning there, but that's not contextualizing it. And so being able to call out both the good and the bad is literally necessary in order to do that nuance that we were talking about earlier.
What it almost sounds like you're talking about, like a metaphor that can be used to describe this, an analogy, is notes. Any kind of notes. Like if you've ever been in any kind of dramatical production, if you've ever been in a play or any kind of things, the common practice in drama is that when you do a rehearsal, when you do a scene, the director will sit down and give out notes afterwards. You don't interrupt the performance or the scene as it's going on, unless something is wildly off track. You let everything play out, and then you give notes. That's the same thing as feedback. It's the idea of what is working, what isn't working, what needs to be shifted. The principle of everyone providing data to each other about how you think the other players are playing, how the storyteller ran. Yeah, that sounds like an ideal that we can all reach towards. We can all become better at the game, both in terms of storytelling, in terms of playing, how we can all be wonderful at it and interacting with each other. That sounds fantastic and idealistic. It also sounds like a really, really great way that we can all build our AI facsimiles of each other because we have perfect data on each other's behavioral patterns. Yeah, so maybe Ed is in fact a plot. Maybe he did in fact by MI6 and has been admitting nothing ever since. Who knows? But I think we're all fundamentally in agreement here. Feedback's good. People should do more of it. The question then is how to go about that, and why I was pointing out like maybe using like a questioning, ask people why they did things as a methodology. Complimenting each other. That's fine. That's good. People like compliments. Compliments are great. If you think that somebody did something that was particularly cool and awesome in a game, isn't it a nice thing to tell them? Yeah, and that's just another form of feedback. Something I've noticed in my thousands of years of playing is, well, at least something that I like and dislike, is when people assume that their team lost because somebody on their team fucked up. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes people mess up, but more often than not, if the good team's lost, it's almost better to think in terms of the evil team played well and then build from that assumption, in my opinion. And so the feedback of hey, evil team, how did you do these things? Teach me your ways. Is that something that you can try? Or do you suggest, Ed, that when you as a team member lose, it is correct and optimal to go up to the people who you think fucked up and tell them that they fucked up?
I love how gambling Ed loves playing devil's advocate and then making me look like the villain. So like I think you're calling out a thing that I used to do quite a lot and don't do it quite as much anymore, mainly because it's a little bit harder to do because we're playing a lot more on stream and various other online spaces, and not with some of the regular groups that I used to play with. But when I was playing in person and playing with the same group all the time, one of the things that I do and try and do regularly was, when you finish the game, you have this sort of celebration, you have the excitement. Then I sort of point to, okay, well, here's something I saw as a storyteller that I don't think anyone else saw that was really cool, because it gets other people to discuss those things. But then after that, you get to turn around to, it's easier to do with an evil team that's just lost. If good's just won, it's quite easy to turn around to a member of the evil team and be like, oh, what do you feel like was the turning point? Because that's not a negative thing. What do you feel was the point where it went wrong for the evil team. That's usually, oh, this person got the read on that person, or this piece of information came out at a moment that it was socially trusted, and all those things. And while it's still a positive discussion, it is turning towards the okay. Well, what went wrong in the game? And it makes it much easier to transition into okay. Well, if there was a negative thing, an actively negative thing, it's much easier to transition through discussing that and back out the other side. Because if there were truly negative things, amongst other things, it's going to be an elephant in the room if you don't discuss it. But also, the fact that you're all still in the room, rather than having had a row and stormed off, means that it either it recovered, or people were able to get past it. And so you can discuss the negative thing as a group and then acknowledge the fact. But hey, like I was really impressed by Mia, who, as we were all feeling that sort of like, oh, that was a little bit aggressive, and we all feel a bit awkward. Mia jumped in with like just a lovely tone change that reset the tone into a new place, and we did that really well. Or I'm really happy that people were able to negotiate that aggressive conflict moment and sort of step away from it continuing to be a head-to-head conflict and move forwards with it. It's very easy to draw the focus. What went wrong in the game in terms of winning and losing into okay, was there something that went wrong socially or mechanically or whatever else, and how did we get out the other side of it? Is there, if you can find it, most of the time in order to transition through that negative without it just being a dwelling in the negative.
Okay. You want more analysis, generally.
Yeah, in life, and in Clocktower, yes. I mean, this is a slightly jokey anecdotal thing, but I have a friend who loves watching all the Twitch streams and YouTube videos. Just they will have them on while they're working and various other things, and they will partially they initially started just sending me comments that they found funny, right? If someone in chat was like, oh, I did this weird thing, they'd send me this comment because they were like, you'll find this funny as well. And at one point I turned around to them and went, I don't want the ones that are just, oh, this was the information that won the game, or that read was correct, or whatever else. I want all the ones that were like, I don't understand, or what's he doing? Why is he doing that? Or the things that were like, especially because I was getting occasions where someone in chat would be like, oh, I think Ed's just lost the game for the good team or for the evil team or whatever else, and I'm like, great, I want to know about those. But I don't want to have to watch the videos because I hate watching Clocktower. I can't do it, and I especially can't do it if I'm in the damn games. So I have a friend who will send me all of those comments because people who are, we all know this. People in YouTube comments and stream the Twitch streams in the Clocktower community aren't as bad as classic YouTube comments, but they're still hiding behind an anonymity, and they have the ability to give you the most sort of scathing feedback in the world. I like that because it's like it's the extreme feedback, but I'm willing to go, yeah, okay, this person is possibly toxic in any number of ways, but it's still giving me the extreme end of the feedback, which I can use to set like that is one pole of the feedback. I don't suggest that most people do that. I'm quite autistic and very willing to ignore emotions. But it's still a source of feedback that I actively use, just because in a lot of situations you don't get the feedback otherwise. So pinch of salt, but it is a thing that I'm willing to consider.
You would genuinely rather have the worst, most toxic screaming feedback than nothing. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. But also, it's very hard to upset me.
You've heard it here first, folks. Please scream at Ed. When next you see him at a convention of any kind in real life, just go up and scream directly in his face.
Yeah.
He likes it. He's into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But jokes aside, I do take the point. I very much take the point that even the most extreme, the kind of ridiculous feedback that you can counter easily in your own head can still be valuable, because in the case where you have to go, no, you're wrong and here's why, you have gone through the mental process of explaining even to yourself why that view is wrong, which can solidify in your own brain why you did a thing, why a thing was good. Sometimes I would imagine, even in your paradigm of everyone providing feedback of all kinds at all times, people are going to provide feedback that you think is nonsense, right? That's just humanity. People
Yeah.
are going to be wrong.
I appreciate you being here, Ed, because that was where that sort of tangent was supposed to go, but I got sidetracked in the middle of it. So yeah, thank you for filling in the dots for me. But yeah, like I think one of the things that I've held as a sort of like a rule of life to date is I can't remember who it is. It's some older philosopher that was like, a choice is just a choice, but a choice twice is the start of a habit. And a habit that you repeat is a lifestyle, and a lifestyle you maintain is you. And so, like, analyzing an individual choice is meaningless comparatively, but analyzing a single choice enough that you go, yes, I do or don't want to make this choice again, is the first little step on defining who you are as a person, or in this case, who you are as a Clocktower player. And so, it's one of the things that I also try and call out a lot is the next step for me with feedback is, okay, you got feedback that's negative or positive. You need to think through that enough, like you've just said, to reason with, do I think this is valid? Do I think this is correct? Do I think this matters to me that I change this thing? And if it does matter to me to change this thing, I don't need to instantly change everything about myself in order to match that. I need to make one choice that goes in the right direction. And then after that, if I still think that was the right direction, I need to make another choice.
So it turns out that Mia is in fact a complete genius, because she's decided to bring two people who, given the opportunity to talk about Clocktower, will talk about almost anything else. I did settle on this particular one because yes, I did in fact present four options, and Mia picked one. Well, Mia picked two, and then I said no and said pick again, please. So we've approached this very similarly, Ed. I believe quite strongly that Blood on the Clocktower is for everyone. Dramatic pause.
We agree. We can just stop there. It's done, right?
Yeah,
That's
the thing is,
okay. Just yeah.
I could take it to the extreme and to make it more comedic, as saying yes, and therefore I will be demanding that Parliament introduces mandatory Blood on the Clocktower for all ages from 12 to 32 sessions daily, and we must all spend all of our time talking only about this. Yeah, of course. But I think that people who even people who truly believe themselves to be anti-social deduction as a genre of game should try it. Social deduction as a format, as a genre, is something that does sometimes get bad press from certain types of people, certain kind of approaches to game playing. We all accept that games are good. Games are a part of humanity, that it allows us many bonuses and many benefits to our approach to socialization and modeling and all these wonderful things. Games are great. Shouldn't we gamify everything? Sure, whatever. That's another conversation. But social deduction teaches skills that are, I believe, in this unfortunate modern world of ours, becoming a little necessary. Things like media literacy, the ability to tell when someone is trying to manipulate you. That's pretty fundamental to Blood on the Clocktower and social deduction in general. When someone is presenting a rhetorical case that is perhaps a little nonsensical when you bury down, we as a society need that right now. I'm not going to point in any particular direction. I've decided, based on the choice I've gone with as my opinion, not to get too political with this. But we in the internet age need the ability to tell when someone is lying to us desperately. And developing and honing that skill is something that Clocktower is quite obviously good at. We maybe, as a function of that, learn how to manipulate each other, and that's not necessarily good. That's not really the focus of this game, is it? There are options in this game that allow us to play more truthfully than others. If you don't want to be the demon and have to be a liar, you can be a traveler. There are ways that you can avoid the necessity of lying. And while this is the kind of social deduction game that teaches that good players can lie too, and that's beneficial. You never have to. There is the very design structure of this game demands that there is no one correct way to play any role. And if you want to just play fairly straightforwardly, you can. Maybe not if you're evil. But even then, there are ways around that, depending on what role you are, what script you're playing, what group of people you're playing with. This game also teaches the value of community. It teaches you to trust your teammates. It teaches you to come together as a group of people, of human beings talking to each other. And if that doesn't sound like the most valuable thing today, I don't know what is. It's also the kind of game which has been proven by TPI multiple times, that cares deeply about diversity, of providing tools for people who would normally be explicitly excluded by the kind of talking game that this is. There are Fabled, designed with the intention of letting people who are hard of sight or hard of hearing play the game normally. And something that is so valuable is the idea that people who are members of the community who have difficulties of any kind are still members of the community, are valuable people who deserve their chance to play, have fun, interact with everyone in a way that helps everyone. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, enjoyed
Jeepers.
that.
I kind of wanted to go further than I wanted with this, if only so that it would give us a chance to kind of pull it back in discussion. The thing is, I've heard it said a couple of times by people whose opinions I otherwise believe in, that social deduction games are a way to normalize lying to your friends.
Yeah.
And no, they're not. It can be in the worst possible scenario, but that's why I think like the curtain call is such a cool ritual that everyone, it's like the end of a play, right? When all the dead characters stand up and bow to the audience to remind everyone, hey, yeah, no, these people, they're just players. It's fine. At the end, in the curtain call, like all the evil players stand up and say, hey, we won or lost, but we're all friends together, and this is the town of Ravenswood Bluff. Isn't that cool? Isn't that awesome? These people who have been lying to you for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 5 hours, if you're playing BMR badly, are your friends, and that's cool. And they lied to you, and they manipulated you, but now they're not. Now the truth is out, and we all get to talk to each other, and we have that game of feedback, that after session that Ed is so deeply fond of, and we get to look at each other in the eye, if we're playing IRL, sometimes online, and say, hey, that was really interesting. That story you told me about how X, Y, and Z are evil, and I believed you. How did you do that to me? That was fun, because then we can take those skills and those paradigms and maybe apply them outwards. Wouldn't that be cool? And then maybe we wouldn't elect such people anymore. Anyway,
100%. I think it's it's something that I tend to like. Every panel I've ever done about Clocktower at some point ends up with me just waffling about the joys of Clocktower, and like one of the prevailing themes is sort of tangentially related to exactly what you're talking about, which is I always say Clocktower is a game that looks like it's about lying, but it's actually about connection. It's actually an immersive experience where everyone is choosing to submit all of their usual ego and personal attitudes and mentality to the social contract of we are all going to do this thing together in the effort to have fun. And in the process of having fun, we're going to exercise certain skills that, frankly, with the best of the world, we don't get to use in real life. You don't get to use most of these deductive talents in real life. And so it's very easy to look at social deduction and be like, well, the deduction is just to counteract the fact they didn't want to call it social lying. And it's like, well, yes, but the whole point of the game is not the lying, it's the unraveling of the lies. And you're missing completely the other word, which this is social. We're all actively choosing to be here to have fun. And so this game that looks like it's about lying is about connecting to people and finding common ground and understanding how, when you're given a very small truth, and because every game of Clocktower is founded on the very small truth of you are good or you are evil. And that gives you connection. If you're evil, that gives you a connection to the other evil players and nothing else. And if you're good, that gives you a connection to people and you don't know who they are yet. And so you spend an entire game trying to find and justify that connection. That's not about lying to people, that's about connecting.
with a few tiny exceptions to those rules, if you're the lunatic, the marionette, all those kind of things. Yeah, there are the occasional. But that's just the design philosophy of every good modular game of this kind. Every rule is made to be broken.
But also, I think the lunatic and the marionette are actually great examples of that connection because it works twice, right? Especially the marionette spends the game trying to find good players and then realizing that that's not who they are, and then having to try and re-establish themselves with that different mentality in the social circle. On this philosophical level, so interesting.
Please.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could both wax so much hypothetical about the genius of the marionette's design. Still my favorite role in Clocktower. The simple, because it comes with that simple rule of yes, in any other game of this type of social induction, a role where you think you're good but you're actually on the evil team would be potentially incredibly destructive because everyone is now incentivized to maybe hedge for evil a little bit, but it also comes with this wonderful little kind of backstop of, and therefore the demon is next to you. So the way that you hedge is not necessarily lying. You just don't vote on your neighbors. Or if you're in a certain group that has this as a, an accepted rule, wait for one of your neighbors to tell you the other marionette, although I have opinions about that as well. The greater point is you're playing a game. There are rules. There are mechanics that are enforced. This is not always the case in real life. Sometimes people out in the wild world decide that actually all the social taboos and structures of society that we theoretically choose to live by are just suggestions. And so within the context of a game, you can try things, can play with the social structure of a society in a way that's safe and reasonable and simulation-y. And you can discover those things that actually are too far. You can walk up to those social boundaries that underpin and undergird society, and you can say, is it okay to lie to someone when they are having an emotional moment, and discover, yeah, no, actually, no, that's wrong. That's just wrong. Even when we're playing a game where the object is to win, there are hard limits on a social play that we can all come together as a community to discover. Isn't that wonderful?
I really like that point. It's sort of touching on that, like, one, we're creating an environment where we're allowing each other to lie to each other, but also we're still doing it within the confines of a game. And like we could play a game of Clocktower. That doesn't mean I can't just say any lie to you. That doesn't normalize that in any way. It just means that within the structure that we've created and that we've all agreed to, there can be lies within this structure.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, I don't know if either of you watched the recording of a panel that Nor and Milk and I did at Final 3Con last year. It's not to give me as listeners extra homework, but the entire panel, not the entire panel, but a good portion of the panel, which was basically about sort of the neurospicy in Clocktower, was on that point of this is one of the best games for people that otherwise struggle with society to find out how to society.
Oh, fully, absolutely, 100% agree with that. We've both spent time for our sins in the great place that is the unofficial Discord server, a collection of humanity that is a wonderful cross section of the internet, one might argue, and the number of times I've encountered people who describe themselves in terms of neurodivergence, of any of those kinds of things, or have some kind of social difficulty, but still enjoy Clocktower and can still use it as a way to relate to other people, is kind of breathtaking, isn't it? That this social game would draw in people with social difficulties and can in some ways diffuse those difficulties, can be used as a tool to get around them. There are going to be people for whom it doesn't fit. My first opinion point of this is for everybody. Humanity is too deep and broad for everyone to vibe with this thing. And I don't know about you two, but I don't think I could reasonably take my parents to a game of Clocktower and expect them to have fun. Actually, that's
I could.
Actually, you know what? I say that. I say that, but I think actually.
I've seen plenty of people bring their parents to like conventions and whatnot.
Yeah, 100%. I have to say, I could bring my parents to a game of Clocktower. You wouldn't want me to. They'd end everyone. My parents would take people to pieces. So, if you think I'm bad, anyway.
if you're into that kind of thing, some people like losing. But
True.
the point is that this is something that anybody can pick up and try. I think that a big part of that inclusivity is not just the incredible efforts the community as a whole goes to being too inclusive, but the very institution of the storyteller. We have this one person whose job it is to make sure everyone's having fun. That's so valuable, so useful, and so necessary for something that's so open to everybody. Do either of you have a part of Clocktower, some innovation that it brought to the social action scheme, or some aspect of it that you think runs contrary to this principle, that you think is perhaps a little alienating to new players, to people who are outside the scene?
Yes, but they all exist in a space where if the storyteller's making choices to put them in play, I have different questions for them. Because there are plenty of characters that can really strongly push against social metas and inclusivity, but they all come later in your Clocktower life. Like, they're not on TV for a reason. So it's I mean, evil twins, viziers, anything that's outed evil has that impact. Marionette can really have this problem. It's another thing that I go into in that Neurospicy panel with Nor, is some of the social contract issues around the marionette and having to be very careful with it, because there's it's a second level of deception which people aren't, especially the Neurospicy, aren't necessarily ready for. But all of those things come, like I say, later in the Clocktower world. They come in your 10th game. They don't come in your first game. And it also gives you a chance to frame them in the context. Like, you've had the opportunity to step into the game world and learn those, we're doing things within the boundary of these rules, to then advance that understanding with, and now we're doing something that, had I sprung it on you immediately, you'd be like, oh God, no. That you get an opportunity to do in a safe space. Yeah.
Yes. Why TB is so genius. It provides that. It provides all the heuristics that allow people to then build into greater confusing and broken worlds. So, sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize, Ed. Please carry on.
No, I was about to waffle, so it was a good idea. Mia explicitly instructed us both not to waffle too much, and oops.
Well, behind the scenes view for the listeners who are, this is no doubt all going to get edited out, of course, is that we're allowed to explicitly waffle, but it has been made clear that Mia prefers a tight and directed conversation. So here we are, trying to be a little bit more disciplined.
I think that ship sailed long ago.
Oh well, it's only been what
An hour?
an hour, and we haven't even got to the third call yet.
Yeah. Go on.
Just to to finish up the point, I think we're all fundamentally in agreement with this, but unfortunately, I'm fully aware that I'm surrounded. But I've decided I'm in the middle of this Duchess 3. I am the second opinion, after all. That I'm surrounded by people who are deeply, deeply enfranchised, who are into this world, this community, this game, and so therefore, it's not particularly shocking to me that you both agree that this game is for people, everyone. I kind of I really wanted to see if either of you have any devil's advocate points on this. If there is something that the game could be better at.
All right. So I have the strongest example of this is that while the game holistically can be for anyone, the game can be played so very differently that most games of Clocktower are not for most people, especially when you've established a meta. As the meta gets stronger, you're basically excluding more and more people from that meta. And this isn't necessarily a negative thing. This is you finding how to have fun in a way that you enjoy. But I think the example that I use all the time is when I'm running a game of Clocktower for new people, which happens not infrequently. I get someone will reach out to me and go, "Can you come run at this my birthday, because I want to introduce Clocktower to all my friends, but I don't want to storytell it because I don't feel like I can. So can I get you to come run it for me?" And I'm like, "Great." And then my next question is, what sort of people are they? Because the game that I run and the energy that I put in and the tone that I put in is going to be massively dictated by how I think those people are implied going to enjoy it. Like, if you've got a very, I don't know, to pull an example that happened relatively recently, if you've got a very like hipster crowd that doesn't like following the norms, you can run a very eccentric game that it calls attention to you are all unique and you all play differently and gives them permission to do that a lot of people would really struggle with if they are a more like from a more social deduction background, because they're trying to work out who's good and who's evil, and when everyone's being different and weird and unique, they can't follow that. Or if you've got a group that loves being loud and in your face and aggressive, if you as the storyteller are continually trying to rein them back in, or you don't set the tone of this is what's okay and this is what isn't early, those players aren't going to have fun. And there's like an infinite array of these things. Like, I am capable, and it's one of the things I've worked very hard on, bearing in mind I obviously have my own perceptions of how I want to play the game. I worked very hard on being able to give different energies in the rules talk at the start of a game based on how I think the group is going to respond and how they're going to want the game to go, and commensurately how long the days are, how much I push nominations, how short I cut accusations and defense. I think this is one of the things that I try and call attention to all the time. Anyone who I've talked to about running games for people the first time, if they're gamers, you want to be able to play 2 games. Like the classic gamer crowd wants to play 2 games on their first Blood on the Clocktower experience. One a little bit slower so they can work out how the mechanics all work and they have a time to do all the thinking and the deduction. And then a second game that goes like shit off a shovel and you are absolutely pushing it. Go, 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 because it gives them the chance to feel all the excitement of, okay, we understand the mechanics now and we have to actually do the puzzle without sitting here and putting pieces in very carefully like it's a jigsaw puzzle. We've actually just got to go, I think this is correct, let's go. And they feel the completely different energy and the completely different fun of the 2 versions of the game. And some people will like option A, and some people will like option B, and most people will like somewhere in the middle, and that's fine. But you need to give people the chance to find out it's not just one sort of game. And you need to give them the space to discover that. And so, yes, it is for everyone, but that doesn't mean any given game is for everyone. So it's an inclusive, exclusive thing based on how you're playing. That's my devil's advocate for you.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely the idea that and this kind of pulls back to your earlier point about feedback, maybe. It's all one grand unified theory of Clocktower. We are all trying to find the perfect group of people to play with, and that may be everyone.
Yes, I will observe that if the 2 of us and newly appointed me, Ed, are coming to a grand unified theory of Clocktower, I'm pretty sure it's called the Edifice.
Or possibly it's just the education theory.
Oh, that's good too.
Either way, the edifice is nice. It's a construction. Oh well. But then how many D's are in?
It depends depends which one of us is typing it.
Funny enough, that would be spelled the correct way. Only 1 D.
It is my turn to give an opinion. It is time to actually talk about some Clocktower.
Oh my god.
I know, incredible. I've looked through my list. I don't really have many social ones because I feel kind of bad that mine's quite a mechanical opinion. But I don't have a ton of social ones on my list right now. But anyways, I think that the Fibbin should be on more scripts. So the Fibbin is a fabled, which basically says once per game a player gets misinformation or something to that effect. And the first bullet point on the wiki is that you should put it on a script if you have no droisening or no misinformation. I think that's wrong. I think it's okay for the Fibbin to go on a script where, for example, maybe you have a widow on the script. Sure, that's a source of misinformation, but if widow is your only source of misinformation on that script, you can put a Fibbin on there. If you have, for example, a recluse and a spy, put a Fibbin on there. I think that more scripts need it. I think it's a tool that allows for better flexibility in building bags, such that you don't end up with situations that can feel inherently good favored. Because I do think that a lack of misinformation is inherently good favored. So by putting it on a script, it means that you can potentially have more varied setups that can still be more balanced in a mechanical sense. Of course, you can never account for the social side, but ensuring that the bag is balanced from a mechanical side can be more enjoyable. And also, it's not a fabled that's like the SX Fiasco. It's not a fabled that needs to be used. If you have a script that and you have an Odashi and a Widow in the bag, and you've got a Fibbin on that script, you don't need to use that Fibbin. There's plenty of misinformation in that game. You don't need to compound that misinformation by using this Fabled. It's only ever a might. You can get to the end of the game, and it's fine. And also, it has a ton of really interesting interactions. It's not just that you must receive false information. It specifically calls out if you had an ability where you would learn false information, you can instead learn true information as a part of the Fibbin's ability. I feel like it's got a lot of unexplored character interactions that I would like to see explored more. I've briefly noted down some characters that I think it potentially works better with and works worse with, but I think it probably doesn't work as great with the drunk. I think that the core of this is that, generally speaking, it works especially well with face-up reasoning, for lack of a better word. So that would be something like the sailor, where the sailor can go to someone and say, hey, I picked you last night, you might be drunk, and good at able to build around that information. Whereas I think face down, like the drunk, potentially not. I still do think there are some, mainly in the minion suite. So Zahn and Widow would be the two minions I would point out. But I would avoid it with the Poisoner. The Poisoner is way too strong. And I also think you can do some things with Savants. It can be a fun Savant statement to say that the Fibbin has been used already. On day 3, to give that to the Savant, it means that potentially people either start going, okay, well, then we know that all of the information from now on can't be Fibbin, or we know all the information previously hasn't been Fibbin. So I think it is an underused Fabled, and I would like to see it used more.
I have a very meta question for you, Mia, which occurred to me when you said the Savant thing. I was going to talk about something else, but you said the Savant thing and now it's in my head. I love the idea of giving a Savant a true statement and then following it with the true statement the Fibbin has been used already because you've just given them 2 true statements. Because by the time you finish the sentence, it has been used. Anyway. Yeah, I think one of the things about the Fibbin that has not necessarily been its downfall, but has caused a lot of its use being rarer, is that it's very easy to look at the Fibbin, or to look at a script with the Fibbin on, and it's something that people do quite a lot in Clocktower. Speaking of like having the extreme opinion, it's very easy to look at a script and be like, oh, there's no information on here, or oh, there's loads of information on here, we're screwed in either direction. And a lot of the time people will look at a script with the Fibbin on and go, oh, there's not really any way we can work out specifically who's Fibbined, so it's all just a social game now, we're just playing werewolf. And it's like, that is the extreme opinion, because like the whole point of the Fibbin is that it's happened once. You don't dismiss all of the information, you dismiss n-1 of the information at all times.
Because people have probably never played TB where there's no poisoner in play, Like,
yes,
only one person can be a drunk at any particular point, so you can always work it out.
Yes, absolutely. Go on.
It's fun though. I have a question. Oh, great and powerful Mia Ed. What do you believe? Because you led into this saying that this is a mechanical opinion, not a social one, and I fully disagree. I think this is 100% a social opinion. Because what is the purpose of misinformation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it serves multiple points. It serves the purpose of good players unintentionally lying and spreading information they believe to be true in a genuine manner, such that you can't get the social read of their lying. Would be, I guess, the main purpose of it. But I also do think it balances out the mechanical information that is present within the game, because otherwise, every game I think good would win almost.
Yeah,
you say that, but you say that as someone I'm guessing hasn't played a lot of Werewolf.
Sure, but my point is, if you had trouble brewing, but you removed all the misinformation from it, the fortune teller goes, "I picked these 2 players, and one of them's a demon," and then you kill them both, and then is I guess my argument?
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you on that sense. Plus, also on the assumption that the fortune teller is real and not evil bluffing. And if you follow it, then that's how you get bad games of SNB. But further to this point, and then my actual real question is like, why do people sometimes hate social deduction games? Why do people not like it? A lot of the time, it's nothing to do with the lying on I think it's the social conflict. It's the idea that I am presenting something, you're presenting something that directly contradicts that. One of us must be evil. We have to fight. And so every game before Clocktower just had a lot of evil twins. Droizen and misinformation in general softens that. It provides a third option. Maybe we're both good, but one of us is drunk or poisoned. Isn't that cool? Isn't that wonderful? And so the Fibbin, those wonderful little shoes with the curly edges, such a lovely little artistic thing. Wonderful. Wouldn't it be cool if you could just add it to a script, and what it would do was not necessarily people fighting over who has been Fibbin, but it allows a certain amount more softer social play of, okay, we two have obviously got contradictory information. Like, I am saying you're the demon, and you are saying you are not the demon. What happens if I'm Fibbin? And those greater opportunities for kind of a wider world building. Something I didn't touch on, and I don't want to like go out of topic with my everyone can play this. A skill that this game teaches us is world building, entertaining hypotheticals. The idea of what if X is true, what if Y is true. Fibbin and misinformation in general provides an extra complication to that world building that makes this game so rich and deep. I want to ask a last question for the two of you on this, and then I'll shut up because I've been talking a lot. Do you think that the Fibbin could be a Lorik instead?
Mia, do you want to go first?
See, it could be in just a general sense. I personally find the Lorik and Fable divide quite benign, meaningless. I don't love it.
Okay, in that case, I will jump in, because to me, some of the sort of the original intent of the Lorik and Fable divide is maybe been muddied by some of the later Loriks, but like I think the Fibbin falls into the classic box of it in terms of like intent and function. It is a Fabled. It's supposed to go on scripts and modify how those scripts work on a base game level, and like if you extract almost all the humanity from the game, this is affecting how that script functions as a set of characters that you could plug into an AI and run 1,000 times. That affects that base game. Whereas the Lorik are intended to affect the vast majority in the humans, the social group, the way the game plays as people rather than the way the game plays as mechanics. And that's where I feel like the divide was supposed to be with the Loriks. Obviously, some of them sort of like dance joyfully back and forth over that line, but I think that's where it's supposed to be.
Okay. I guess we're wandering off the point then, if we're going with that. I suppose the question I was actually asking, to phrase it better and in a way that's more direct to this, is are you okay with storytellers adding the Fibbin to scripts that don't, in a huge inverted commas, need it?
Yes. Mainly because it's a learning experience. Also because it's a great demonstration of whether your players can trust you. Because there's points where there's scripts like Mia said that you have the Fibbin on that you don't need it for. If one of your demons is no dashi, but the others are imp oho, then you might need the Fibbin with the imp and the oho because they give no misinformation, but you don't need it with the no dashi. And so your players need to be able to trust. The storyteller's probably unlikely to use the Fibbin in this no dashi script unless we are already stomping it. That sort of mentality. It's not a bad thing to have it in there, and choosing whether to use it is just another storyteller choice. So I think the answer to that is pretty solidly in that direction. Mia, did you want to answer this question, or can I move on to another thing that I found very interesting about your opinion?
You can move on.
Okay.
Very quickly to that, and sorry, there's kind of a callback to a few weeks ago when George and JC were talking about throwing out the mechanicals in Final 3 specifically and just going off socials. If there were
JC's
more Fibbin
opinion.
around, yeah, JC's opinion, which I'm sure we both have thoughts on, but we're not talking about it today. If there were more Fibbins around and people were more willing to say, actually, you know what, the mechanics are X, but I think Y because of socials in Final 3 specifically, good would win more. And so if that is true, maybe the Fibbin is in fact the most good-sided Fable that there is.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry, Ed, tell me on.
The thing I was going to say about this question is I think it was very definitive of how I think of Mia as a Clocktower player. Because Mia, you present almost exclusively as if you're going to be the most crunchy logic player in the world. Up until the moment that mid-game, probably 2/3 of the way through, you yeet that logic out the fucking window and go, no, actually on vibes, this is the one that's lying. I don't care what the information says. And like the way you flip-flopped as soon as Gambling replied on "Is this actually a mechanical opinion?" it just demonstrated that for me, because I based on how I play with you and how you have played with me every game I've ever played with you, if there's a Fibbin in the game, I know full well that you'd spend the first 2/3 of the game going, okay, well, I think, if we exclude this thing, then this is the evil team. If we exclude this thing, then this is the evil team. If we exclude this thing, then this is the evil team. And then, on Final 5, you would go, no, I don't believe that person is the one that's been fibbined. I think they're evil. And I would go, why? And you go, social, innit? Because you want the fibbing for the mechanics and the crunch and the like giving that misinformation, but also it's another tell for you, right? If someone's leaning on fibbing, it's a reason to be like, oh, maybe they're just evil if they're insisting that hard that they're fibbing. In the same way that we call people out if they're like, I'm the drunk, without necessarily having good reason to believe it, or when there's still worlds where they're not. I think. Do you know what I mean about this being a very good demonstration of the way you are in Clocktower?
Defend yourself, Mia. You're being attacked. This feedback that is being presented to you.
Bitch!
Terrible.
Yeah.
How dare you?
I think I am a mostly mechanical. I think the reason I often throw things out, as you put it, is that I find world building to be a social experience. Very often I will sort of approach players and go, look, I just want to world build. Let's just world build. I don't particularly care what your alignment is. And but like, you don't always get that. And I feel like sometimes there is a point where you just have to abandon it. Is I think why I do that, but I'd love to just do more mechanical stuff. I really enjoy the mechanical stuff. I don't as much love the social stuff within Clocktower sometimes.
Fair. Can I ask you a question on that? That you may or may not cut out. Because last night we played S&V for Patter's recording, and one of the reasons I was bringing that point up about how you play was it was kind of right into the front of my brain, because last night in this game of S&V, Mia approaches me when Mia's already dead. I'm the demon. Didn't want to be the demon, different story. I'm the demon, and Mia approaches me and goes, you need to convince me why you're not the demon. And I have a really clear memory of in the back of my brain going, you know what? I usually try logic with Mia. Let's just go full social and yeet the logic entirely. And it was a really interesting experience playing, because like you say, you are quite a crunchy player. You do want to follow the logic wherever possible. But you approached me and went, tell me why you're not. And you didn't tell me to tell you logically. So I was like, okay, I want to see what Mia does when I just play a social game back at her. And the really interesting thing about that conversation was that you went, okay, I'll go with this. I'll yes and this and go with where you're at. And you didn't try to push me back to the logic. And if anything, I think I sold you socially for a small amount of time until the next day, and then you were like, nope. You know what I mean?
A potentially bad example of the game, because it was an extraordinarily messy Final Four.
So I will say on that, so it's something I've been doing a lot recently, is that I find when I'm in a mechanical sense, I will immediately, like, if I'm building you as evil, I will dismiss information from you. And it's something that I'm aware that I do. And so I quite often like to approach players that I think are evil because I don't want to be excluding them in a sense. I came away from that conversation thinking you were more evil. I remember going to Nor, Ed is the demon. The reason that I initially approached you and thought you were evil was because at the time Nor had died and you were one of 4 players that hadn't voted. So we were like, oh, okay, cool. Ed's probably a demon that killed a flower girl claim to obfuscate the voting patterns, and also a lot socially.
Yeah, very funny because, I had fully just yeeted a kill into the void because I'd been barber swapped into the demon on night 2 and was like, I wasn't paying attention to this shit. What's going on?
I think if you didn't kill Nor, like, I would not have built you as demon for a lot longer. But I think I'm becoming more aware of the social side of the game, if that makes sense. And like making sure that there isn't bleed, for lack of a better word, between the two, of like, I'm gonna damage the socials because of mechanicals, or I'm gonna damage the mechanicals because of socials, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the thing that, not to keep being anecdotal, but the moment where I really felt like you'd switched from being such a crunchy player was at one of the GLCs. I can't remember exactly when. You were the goblin, and you turned around to me and went, "My claim is your claim. I'll claim something else." And then you played an entirely social game, and it was only like you only came out with information at final 5, and that was only because you were like, "Oh, we need some information. We've got none so far." But you played an entirely social game, and you could have chosen to play an entirely mechanical game. Like, notwithstanding the goblin bit, that was to try and remind you which game it was.
No, Ed. I specifically couldn't have done that game because we didn't get bluffs until about final 5.
Oh, that is true. That is very true. I had forgotten that bit of it. Yeah, this is true. This is a game where the storyteller broke the rules because I was the demon and they decided that I didn't need bluffs. So they gave me the bluffs imp, and the middle finger. I was the imp. So, you know.
It took me days of pleading with the storyteller to get a single bluff. And then it was like barbarizing.
I didn't know how to react to that. Is that a storyteller you'd be happy to be storytold by again at some point, or?
It was very definitely in full. It was late night. Most of the rest of the game that weren't
It
me
was a
and Mia
DLC.
were drunk.
It was very, very much a context.
Yeah.
This is fine
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we're
yeah.
all just having fun.
Yeah, and it's
Cool.
people who
I don't know.
played
There's a part of that
50 plus
anecdote
games
that makes me
together.
think, gosh, jeepers, this storyteller needs to never run again. But hey, if you had fun, most important thing.
Yeah, it was a very silly game, but I think the thing about it was that yeah, the Mia that I had played with up until that point would have played that game but hated it, and the Mia that I played with in that game played it and just absolutely ran with it. And I think it was really, it really changed my opinion of how you play the game, and I really enjoyed that. Like,
do you think that pattern of development of moving from mechanical to social is idiosyncratic to Mia, or do most people do some variation of that, of trusting socials more?
I don't think it's unique by any sense, but I think in the sense of everyone can play, I think it is one of the easier everyone's to get on board. Is the person who's like, "Oh, this is a logic puzzle with some lying." Those people are very easy to get into the game. The people who are going to default much more to the other end of the spectrum, where they want to play a social game with some logic, are much harder to intro into the game. Those are the people that I'm talking about, where I want to run a game that is quick fire. You get like 10 words to do an accusation and defense, and then we're rolling, and the days are short, and we're just going to play games quite quickly. Those people need a very different game to get in, to bring our sort of some teensies, some teensies.
Not to like pivot wildly. I think I agree with you in general. I think we're all very much in agreement generally. That's how these podcasts work. We're all just the same people, and we all agree with each other. Well, I think Fibbin should go on Vortox scripts? Just go.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest banes of Vortox that there's too many characters, and S&V included in this. There's too many characters that can know whether it's Vortox or not.
So much more fun when there's doubt.
Yes, I know that there's a lot of reasons why socially, in terms of the arc of a game, any win condition that happens early can feel a bit unfun, and it kind of cuts the arc of the game short before you get to the bit that's most intense and interesting of the final 3. But also, the fact that there's no such thing as a Vortox win with experienced players is sad. It's actively losing out on a really cool mechanic that is part of the fun of the game.
I've seen it happen, I think, once, and that was specifically because everyone was drunk and stupid and forgot.
So, by contrast, I've had it engineered to happen against me, and I've engineered it to happen myself. The time for a Vortox win is 7 alive, with all 3 evils alive, and you tie on the 3rd good player's nomination, and the 4th good player it suddenly has to get it right. And you go, well, look, either you nominate good and we rise up and we get a good player executed, or you nominate evil and we don't vote, and we only need to convince one person to mistakenly vote on one of you, and we tie, and we ain't nominating. it's a really interesting sort of mechanic that comes into the game, but the lack of Fibbin to give that to give that town crier a yes, or sorry, to give that town crier a no when someone broke madness before nominations, or or to give that flower girl a yes when everyone voted, even though it's Vortox, is a big deal.
Because ideally, like town will still be able to solve for it in the long run, because it's the Fibbin can only be used once. If town choose to do 2 days of Vortox checking by having everyone vote Fire Girl or whatever in the classic SNV paradigm, then yeah, they can solve that absolutely. But the amount of investment they have to put into that, 2 executions, 2 days of giving the Flower Girl and Town Crier the most powerful roles on the script, sort of artist, whatever, nothing valuable. That's a lot to give up, and that makes the Vortox much more interesting. And yeah, that could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to play a game of SNV plus Fibbin?
I'd do it.
I'd do it. Yeah, right. You want to go? Let's after this podcast, let's go set it up. Going around SNV and we put a Fibbin play. Yeah.
There is one critical part that we do need to work out before we can do that, which is there has to be a good pun name for SNV plus Fibbin, and I just not quite found it yet.
Okay. Give me. I'll work on this one.
It's one of my favorite things about Ed is that a lot of any time that I can't find the joke that I want to make, I can sort of hipster burger style shove the ingredients across the table on a wooden slab in Ed's direction, and in a minute or so he'll have assembled the joke I was trying to find without me having to put any more effort into it. It's lovely.
Yeah, I appreciate your deconstructed jokes. They are they're delicious, but incredibly ugly looking. It's
Yes.
like if we go back to first, like it's so the shoes are the obvious thing for Fibbin. So shoes or F. There's something to do with haberdashery and no cobblers. Just cobblers. Bunch of cobblers.
It's just cobblers.